All right, let's dive into one of history's greatest, most silent mysteries. We're going to go back in time, about 4,500 years, to a civilization that built these absolutely incredible cities, but left behind no epic tales of its gods or its kings. This is the story of the Indus Valley's lost religion. And that brings us right to the heart of the matter, the big question that's been bugging archaeologists for a century. How in the world do you piece together a people's deepest beliefs when they didn't leave you a single readable text? That is the puzzle we are trying to solve today. So let's paint a picture here. The Indus Valley Civilization was just massive. We're talking larger than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia put together. These people were geniuses of urban planning. I mean, they had sophisticated drainage systems, grid-like streets, but when it came to their beliefs, their gods, their myths, all we get is silence, a profound, baffling silence. The reason for that silence, it all comes down to the Indus script. Now, they had a writing system. You can see it right here on seals and pottery, but we can't read it. Not a word. It's one of history's great unsolved codes. So with no written records, we have to become archaeological detectives, hunting for clues in the actual objects they left behind. So let's officially begin our investigation. We're starting with the most tangible evidence we have, these small, intricate clues they left for us, literally baked into seals and clay. Okay, our first piece of evidence comes from these incredible little stone seals. And archaeologists have found thousands of them. They're tiny, but they are packed with amazing detail. And the most famous one, the one that everyone argues about, is this one right here, known as the Pashupati seal. So let's break this down. What are we actually seeing? Notice that central figure. He's got this super elaborate horned headdress, and he's sitting in what looks, well, a lot like a meditative, almost yogic posture. And he's surrounded by these powerful animals, a tiger, an elephant, a rhino, a buffalo. Some scholars even argue that the figure has 3 faces. Every single detail you see here is a potential clue. All right, let's move on to our next big clue. Unearthed across tons of Indus sites are literally hundreds and hundreds of these small terracotta or clay figurines. And what's really striking is that the vast majority of them are female figures. And they all seem to share some really specific features. I mean, look at the complex headdresses, the layers of jewelry. A lot of them are stylized, sure, but some clearly show signs of pregnancy or are even depicted holding babies. This has led scholars to give them a kind of catch-all name, mother goddess figures. And the sheer number of them tells you this wasn't just some casual art project. This was something deeply, deeply important. So we have our clues, this mysterious horned figure, and a whole army of female figurines. But now comes the really hard part, trying to interpret what it all means. Let's go back to that Pashupati seal, because it just perfectly illustrates the challenge here. On one hand, you've got the proto-Shiva theory, the seated pose, the mastery over animals. It has some serious echoes of the later Hindu god Shiva, especially in his form as Pashupati, the lord of animals. If that's true, it would be a huge link between the Indus Valley and later Indian religions. But there's a whole other way to look at it. Maybe this isn't a god at all. Maybe it's a powerful shaman, a master of spirits, or even a personification of nature itself. That would point to a belief system rooted more in the wild world around them than in a formal pantheon of gods. And that's really the crucial thing to remember here. We're working with a puzzle with half the pieces gone. Every single theory, no matter how convincing it sounds, is still just an educated guess. Certainty? That's a luxury we just don't have. The figurines, though, they do offer a slightly clearer picture. I mean, when you find hundreds of similar artifacts across a civilization that spans 1 million square kilometers, it really points to a shared widespread belief. The most common interpretation? That they represent a mother goddess cult, a belief system totally centered on fertility, creation, and the power of the feminine. But hey, beliefs aren't just objects sitting in a museum, they're actions, they're things people did. So how did these ideas actually play out in daily life? For that, we've got to turn from artifacts to architecture and look at their cities and their graves for clues about their rituals. So this is the Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro. It is a masterpiece of engineering, a massive, totally waterproofed public tank. But here's the weird part. It doesn't seem to be connected to the city's main water supply or its drains. It doesn't look like it had a practical, everyday function. So what on earth was it for? Well, the theory that makes the most sense is that it was for rituals. Just imagine people ceremonially walking down those steps into this special space for a communal act of purification. A structure like this suggests that water held a sacred status for them, and that shared ritual, not just private belief, was really important. The fact that they built a great bath instead of a great temple or a great palace, that speaks volumes about what they prioritized. And what about that final ritual, the end of life itself? You know, how a culture treats its dead can tell us a tremendous amount about what they believed comes next. And this is where the Indus Valley really stands out from the crowd. Unlike, say, the Egyptians with their treasure-packed tombs for god kings, the Indus people had remarkably modest burials. Most graves are pretty simple, containing just the body and a few pieces of pottery. This lack of flashy wealth suggests a very different kind of society, maybe one that was more equal, with a view of the afterlife that wasn't just about continuing your earthly power and riches. Okay, so after sifting through all the clues, the seals, the figurines, the buildings, the burials, let's step back for a second. What can we say we know, and what remains a total unsolved sacred mystery? When you piece it all together, the evidence points to a really rich and complex spiritual life. It seems to be a belief system that held nature in super high regard, that really valued communal purity, and very, very likely centered on the worship of a powerful mother goddess. It's a huge contrast to its neighbors at the time. This seems to be a religion of the people, not of pharaohs and kings. But this is where the trail just goes cold. We can see the shape of their beliefs, but we can't hear their prayers. We can see their symbols, but we have no way to read their stories. And so we are left with this final, incredibly haunting question. As long as their script remains silent, what secret stories, what myths, and what prayers of their world will remain forever untold?